Today on In the Woodyard, do you need to cover your firewood? And if so, why? Coming up right now. So, as you can see, these piles of wood right here are covered. We just got done with rain that lasted 17 hours. It rained starting yesterday, like just about sunset, and right now it's in the afternoon the next day, and it just quit raining. Like maybe 20 minutes ago. And so we've had a good soaking rain. Now it rained really hard for probably 3 or 4 different times for a couple hours. It rained hard. We've got, I want to say somewhere around 2 inches. I just walked over to my wheelbarrow over here, and you can see my wheelbarrow has got a lot of rain in it, as you can see. But it does capture more than what is the actual rain because it's got a bigger top than the bottom. But we did get probably really close to 1.5 inches of rain, maybe 2 inches, somewhere in there. That's my guess, I'm not sure, but I'm thinking it was probably right around 1.5 inches to 2 inches. So I looked at my wood here because it quit raining, so I wanted to come out and look, and it gave me an idea for a video. So the wood that I have right here, obviously you can see is covered, and everything underneath here is dry, except for where I had a couple of leaks where it kind of ran down the edge right here. You can see this stuff got wet, but that's just wet on the edge. And then some of the spots right here, you can see where it kind of ran off the edge of the plastic and it ran down through here. So that got a little bit wet, but everything underneath is bone dry, no rain on that whatsoever. But then I walked over here, over to where I've got wood that is not covered at all. And I was just kind of curious to see how much rain got down into the wood. So I'm gonna walk way over to one of the big piles I have over here. And on these big piles, you can clearly see that the rain did not, I mean, these piles are not covered at all. But you can see the rain right here only went down about a foot or so. Everything below that is dry. So you can see all this down through here. And up here you can see this one's about 2 feet worth of wet stuff. So it's just the top. And if you look on the inside, I can look inside of there, and the stuff inside is actually dry. It's just the edges. So essentially, the wood on top, because it's angled slightly, kind of worked like a shingle. So the rain actually ran off and then down the side. But then everything down below is just perfectly fine. Now, what's kind of unique about this is that this wood is stacked. I don't know, it's probably close to almost 7 feet high right here. Well, 6.5, 7 feet. It gets sun almost all the time here in the morning, all through the day, and even in the evening it gets sun right till sunset. So this wood, the top of it, gets sun all the time. So I really didn't want to cover it because I wanted it to get as much sun as possible, because essentially there are three, count them, 1, 2, 3 things that it takes to dry wood. Number one is it takes wind or air movement. So you got to have airflow of some sort, and that's real important. The next thing is heat or warmth. By the sun hitting it, obviously it warms the wood up quite a bit. So this right now is facing to the west, but if I walk over on this side, so over here on the side that faces to the east, as the sun rises over that direction in the morning, you're getting direct sunlight right here, comes over the top. And then as it's on the top, obviously you get sun all day long up on top, but then in the evening, second half of the day, you're getting sunshine all through on this side. Plus, I've got it stacked so that it does get some airflow around in the middle here too, so you're getting flow all the way through there. And then all these piles, which are full cord piles, they have airflow all the way around because I've got them separated in sections so that I get airflow. So those are the two real important things that you need to get on your wood to dry, is airflow and heat or sun. Because once you get below 32 degrees, obviously the wood is going to have moisture in it and it will freeze, especially once you get down below zero like it does here in the wintertime. So by getting it as much airflow and sun as possible is a very good thing. So I'm thinking the only other thing that really matters to dry wood is one thing, and I'm pretty sure all of you know what it is. It's time. Time is very important. The more time that your wood can dry, the better. So you want as long as possible. The longer it can be exposed to those elements, the wind and the heat, it will dry faster. So anyway, I'm just kind of walking past my piles here. Look down here, you can see this here also, all dry underneath. Just the top part of it's a little bit wet, but on the inside, as you look in there, it's actually dry inside of there. So the water actually came off the ends. So that's a pretty good example that maybe you don't have to cover your wood, but I think you still do have to, and I'll show you why in just a second. Okay, so here's a reason why I think you should cover your wood, especially if you're in a cold climate where you get snow. If you're in a warm climate, maybe not so much. But again, in a warm climate, you're probably going to get a lot more rain. In the wintertime, when everything does freeze up, we get freezing and melting, so you get puddles like this. So all that stuff is going to go down inside as it rains towards the end of the year in the fall. And even in the winter, on warmer days, you can get snow that'll melt down in there, and you get ice down inside of there. And I know that because I've had it happen. And snow can actually work its way down in there too. So your wood is kind of sealed in ice and snow up on top then, especially if you get deep snow, it's really sealed in there tight. And for my purposes, because I'm selling the wood, I want it to be as dry and snow-free and ice-free as possible, because I do sell a lot of it in the fall and winter time. So as that snow and ice all builds up down inside of there, you have to bust it loose, pound it off, and then when you deliver it to people, you're still going to have some ice on there and some snow on there, and you don't want that. You want it to be as dry as possible. And that's one of the big selling points that I have for my wood, that I have in my ad, is that I say that the wood is stacked on pallets or runners like you see here. I got everything up off the ground, and I do have it covered to keep the snow and rain off of it. And people, they ask about that quite often, so that's why I cover it. Now the other thing I do with my covering, which I've covered in other videos, is I always try to have my top a little higher than the sides so that it can flow off. So there's actually a slight arch to it, to my my piles here, and these are one full, it's actually there's 4 face cords in this pile. This one right here is 3 face cords, as you can see, so that's a full cord right there. But yeah, I try to have them so the top is slightly higher than the ends, so that the water and snow will run off of it. So when I go to sell this wood, I'll pull off all of these chunks that are on the top that I have on there for weights that are holding them down. Most of the time, by the time we get to the winter time, these will be dry up on top because they get a lot of sun. They're actually very dry. It's just water moisture that's on them right now. It's not really moisture from the inside. And what I'll do is I'll pull those off. I'll check them to make sure they're dry. If they are, they go into the pile to be delivered. I pull off the top. Usually I pull it off so that the snow all falls off, so it's not going into it. And then when I throw the wood into the trailer, right back over there, more snow will fall off any of that's on there. So I deliver the product to the customers where it's dry and snow free. So that is what I do for covering it. Now, one other thing I want to mention next, when I deliver wood, obviously you want it to be dry like this, like you see right here. So this all has the tarp I have on top where the water can flow off of it. Now, this one face cord I have in top here on this front edge right here, you can see there's moisture on top of this. All that rain from up here came this direction off of this pile onto this wood, but yet look at the bottom. It's still pretty much dry down there. So that is just moisture that's from the rain. It's not moisture on the inside. I'm going to split a piece open right now, one of these wet ones, and we'll show you what it looks like on the inside so that you can see that the inside's actually dry. It's just the outside that's wet. And I think that whole cycle of the wood drying, getting wet, drying, getting wet, I think that actually makes the wood season even faster. So it seems to work just fine, because there are people that do not cover their firewood and they have no problem. I've talked to a few different guys. As a matter of fact, I've seen a couple of videos on it where guys will mention they don't cover their wood because they want as much heat, sun, and airflow as possible. And that's the one bad thing, I think, a drawback about covering your wood like this, is that you're losing some of that airflow out the top. The clear plastic seems to be good because you get a lot of the sun rays to go down and through it. I have a lot of tarps like you see back over there, and tarps like you see on the ones on these big piles over here. They're black tarps, and I just cover the middle. So my main objective to covering them, like you see these here, how they're covered, is that I want the airflow to get all the way around on the sides and just the top covered, because I really just want to keep the rain from going down into the middle of the pile of wood. That's the main thing. Now, there are some people, like I said, that don't cover their wood at all. and they don't seem to have a problem, but they might be aging the wood a little bit longer too. So my wood's all aged for about a year. That's pretty much what I do. So there you go. Okay, so here I got a piece of wood that is wet on the end, wet all the way around. There's a piece that's been laying in a pile right here that has been here for the last, well, 3-4 weeks since I split it, and it needs to be stacked. But this stuff is all bone dry on the inside, so I'm gonna split this apart right now and show you on the inside what it looks like. Here's one that I already did right here. This one I split apart. Oh, if I can find it, here it is. I split this one apart just a minute ago, just to see. And you can see on the outside, it's wet here and it's wet over here. That's the inside, bone dry. A little bit seeped in right there on a crack. But if you look at the edges, it didn't even go into the edge of the wood hardly at all there. So we'll pop this one apart right now and we will take a peek at it. Take a look. Here we go. There we go. So here it is. This is the piece I just split. That's the inside. This is the outside edge. You can see how wet that is. If you look even at the top of it, hardly any water got into the edge of that right on the top. And down here, there's really very little bleeding or seepage going into it, but yet it's all wet all the way around. So the inside, bone dry. So there you go. You might not have to cover your wood at all because this got rained on a lot and it's bone dry stuff. And the wind will dry out the outside moisture. So maybe the rain doesn't affect it hardly at all. Also, there are different materials you can use for covering your wood. I use plastic because I have plastic or tarps because I have so much wood to cover. Right now I have about 550 face cords that I have here in the wood yard that is currently done and ready to be sold. I got a little bit left to stack, but almost all of it is all been stacked. And I will cover a lot of these piles as they get more aged by the end of summer before we get snowfall. So I like to have the sun to actually hit it all year long, but then once we get to winter, then I will cover them up. Now, I use plastic like I mentioned, or tarps, because I have such a huge volume. I just don't have enough tins or aluminum, roofing materials. See, these are all uncovered here. I just don't have enough because I have a lot of wood to cover and I just don't have enough materials to do that. My dad and my brother both use tins on theirs, but they don't produce as much wood as I do. Their wood supply is maybe, somewhere between 50 and 100 face cords, because they usually have 3 or 4 years worth of wood that they have available to burn. And so this is all kind of open here. Now here's what my dad does a lot of times. I do have one that's got some tins here, which works really good. This is just some leftover material from a shed. And what I do is I just obviously have it so it's sloped a little bit and the water will run off. I mainly just want to cover the middle. But I have found with the tins, like my dad found out too, is that if your tins hang real far over, you got to put a lot of weight on the tins because wind will take them right off. They'll just rip them right off. So my dad uses cement blocks a lot of times, but what he does most of the time now I've noticed is he tries to get it so that the tins cover just to the edge so that they're not too far over, and then he puts a lot of weight on top. So that's just another way to cover your wood. And like I said, you don't have to, in my opinion. A lot of people think you have to, but that's important. So no, one of the other things I want to mention is when it comes to covering your wood, what you definitely don't want to do is you don't want to tarp them with the tarps coming all the way down the side or down the front. You don't want to enclose your wood. It has to breathe. You've got to get air on it so that you can get the airflow and the sun on it so that it can breathe. Because if you cover it, you're going to grow mushrooms, you're going to grow mold, you're going to grow all kinds of nastiness. So you don't want to do that. You want it to breathe as much as possible. So those are my 2 cents. So I'm interested in the comments. Let me know down below. Do you cover your wood? And if so, why? Do you think you should cover it? If you don't cover your wood, let me know why you don't think you should. Let me know if you're covering it with plastic, if you're using tarps, if you're using tins, if you're putting it in a shed. I'd be very curious to know what everybody else does. Let me know.